Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Elliot and welcome to This and That Reviews, and I have fallen so far behind. It is now August and I'm doing all of my July movies as in one go as I possibly can, apparently. I had the idea to do them all at the same time, but I am going to do them individually. I think I just want to do it to put out more content out there. But I think I could easily talk about all four of these movies in the same video, but I'm just going to separate them. And so this is Superman. If anything, I think I'm going to go from like favorite to least favorite, and it's more almost in the order that I watched them in. And so I saw Superman first, and this is, what's funny is I didn't even want to compare this to other movies, but I think I'm going to do that naturally anyway. Simply because that's why I started this channel. It's the idea that like even if you accept a movie by itself, there is still the comparison of other things just because. Even if you're not specifically trying to reach and make those comparisons, they just exist because they exist. And that's why I never wanted to be afraid of doing that, and I wanted to embrace that for the concept of this channel. Superman, of the four movies that I saw, Superman, Fantastic Four, Together, and Naked Gun, this is by far my favorite. I actually wanted to go see it today again, and the reason why it took so long to see it in the first place is because I was waiting for my girlfriend to come down to see me from where she is. It's a long-distance relationship, and she wasn't going to be able to get here until the end of the month, and so then that's when we saw it. The more I think about this movie, the more I like it. Like I said, I wanted to go see it again today, but it just didn't work out with my schedule, and so I was like, I'm just going to do reviews instead. I've seen every single... No, I can't say that. I have never seen the Christopher Reeves Superman movies, so basically, Brandon Routh and above. Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill, right? I didn't really watch the Superman animated series, so it's not really high on my favorite superhero of all time. I understand the character, and I feel like that's about as much as you would need to know. And you know what's funny is that there are so many characters in this movie, and you could go crazy. I remember when all the casting was coming out with this movie. You could go crazy and, be like, oh, just way too overwhelmed because of the amount of everything that's happening. There's Lex Luthor, your normal cast of characters. Lex Luthor, Superman, you have Ma Pa Kent, you have Lois Lane. But then you also have all these ancillary characters, if that's the word. You have all these extra characters. You have Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. You have Hawkgirl. You have Mr. Terrific. You have Cat Grant. You have Jimmy Olsen. You have Perry White. You have, all of these... Eve Tessmacher, you have the Engineer, you have Crypto, you have Alan Tudyk as a robot, you have all these other characters, all these other stuff, Metamorpho, I was going to say Metallo, Metamorpho, you have Metamorpho, you have all of these different characters in this movie, and how it manages to zone in and focus in on Superman as a character and deconstruct who he is and as a person is astonishing. The idea that I would recommend this movie to somebody who has a general knowledge of Superman as a character, just giving them the backstory of he's an alien from a planet called Krypton, and he was sent to Earth, and he lives with John. You catch them up on all the stuff that this movie doesn't catch you up on because it assumes that you already know. And if somebody didn't know anything about Superman at all, and you gave them that intro that the movie doesn't give you because it's been done so many times, if you gave them that intro, they could watch this movie and appreciate it. The thing that I love about this movie is that it was very different than any Superman movie, not only that I've seen, but would expect how a Superman movie would be made. And that, I watched Smallville. I watched the entire series of Smallville. Superman is a perfect superhero. It is the template superhero. You have characters that have flying, and you have characters that have super speed, and you have characters that can do heat vision, and this guy does everything. You have characters that have invincibility. You know, you have characters that, you know, do all of these different things, and this character has all of the things. And so I would assume that if you were going to make a Superman movie, you would start with the idea that the whole movie is based on the bad guy figuring out how to take down Superman in some punchy McFisty way, so that they can have a third act finale where, you know, punches and fisticuffs happen. And, you know, it's the bad guy figuring out about Superman and, you know, realizing that his weakness is kryptonite, and, you know, like, and then raising the dead for Doomsday. You know, like, you do that as your movie, as the basis of your movie, because Superman can beat anything. He's Superman. He's pure. He has a love. He has Lois Lane to love him, and he has all the friends' support, and he has infinite superpowers, and he can't be hurt. And, you know, you want a slam bang finale where Superman punches something and he might lose, but then he survives and wins the day, right? And that is what you would assume a Superman movie would be. And James Gunn, being James Gunn, is like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And I'm not gonna go into like heavy spoilers here, but I will say that this movie, because I think that you should know it going in, this movie is Superman getting shit on the entire movie. From the beginning opening of this movie, Superman is losing. And then he loses again in a different way. And then he goes home and loses again in a different way. And then he loses something. And then he loses again. And I got to like the midpoint of this movie, and I was just so sad about everything that was happening. I was just like, you know, like when you watch the trailer, it looks like this fun, adventurous, you know, action, you know, Guy Gardner, Green Lantern giving the middle finger to like a tank, you know, there's so much fantastical. There's a giant kaiju, right? And there's so much fantastical things happening. And there's so much like brightness and bright colors and you know, and there's all of that. But what really makes this movie for me, and as I was talking about it to a friend at work, the thing that makes this movie the best movie that I've seen this month, the best version of a Superman movie, and makes me want to see it again, is the fact that this movie makes you reflect on who you are as a person. And the idea that Superman keeps losing, and you obviously want him to win, and he keeps, you know, getting beat down in different avenues. Every single way that he can lose, he loses. And I won't spoil that because I think that is the fun of the movie. But it makes you reflect on who you are as a person and how you would feel in that situation, because you imprint yourself, whenever you're watching a movie, you imprint yourself on the main character. You pretend like the main character is you. What would I do in this situation? What would I do, you know, like doing, you know, like feeling, how would I feel if this happened to me? Right? That's why you cry at the end of like a romantic movie where one of the characters dies, right? You feel like, you know, the main protagonist that is getting into this relationship. And whether or not you are a girl and that is a girl, or whether you are a boy and that is a girl, you know, like you imprint yourself on that character no matter what, because they are the character you're following. You understand that character the most. What's funny about this movie is that where like a movie where the bad guy is, you know, like figuring out how to, you know, beat down Superman the whole movie, and then, you know, like Superman, you know, is losing a fight because the bad guy has figured out a thing, and then he like triumphantly like, you know, does his secret power and then beats him, right? That's a giant moment. That's like, yeah, you know, like, but you never really had any doubt the rest of the movie. With this movie, you have so much doubt. You have so much doubt that Superman can fix any of this, that he can come through any of this. And the difference is that this movie, throughout the course of the movie, Superman never loses hope, even though you do as an audience member. I feel like a lot of people that are coming at this from the Man of Steel, Zack Snyder, the cult, right? The Snyder cult, right? And they want to see, the best version of a Superman, just Superman that's infallible and a Superman that doesn't care about anything and he can just punch his way out of everything and everybody loves him. They're not going to like this movie. Because like I said, Superman gets shit on the whole movie. But the reason why James Gunn did that is so that you could see Superman as a regular person and still see yourself as that person, but yet, throughout the course of the movie, when all of this is happening to him, he never loses hope. He never believes, he loses a fight and he's not like, oh, I'm gonna go home and go cry because, I never lose, a fight, and so I'm gonna, just stop being in this movie. And, like a Batman. Batman did that. Batman stopped being Batman, right? He's like, I can't do this anymore. Maybe Gotham City is better without me. Batman would do that, right? This version of Superman loses in so many different ways and never stops being the beacon of hope that Superman is, that you grow up, believing that Superman is. And the idea that you as an audience member go through this movie and you get beat down, you see, Clark Kent, Superman getting beat down in all these different avenues, and you start to lose hope. And then when Superman regains hope and goes into the third act, I cried. I cried in theaters. It was just such an emotional moment when Superman not starts believing in himself, but realizes his true purpose and realizes who he's always been and who he's been the entire time of the movie. When it gets to that moment and he goes into the third act, it's what solidified this as one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. Because that is the difference between you and why you're not Superman. Even though all of this bad stuff is happening, Superman always believes, whereas you, the viewer, might stop believing at some certain point. You might want to hang up the cape. You might want to get rid of some of these responsibilities, because getting rid of some of these responsibilities would make it easier to deal with other responsibilities that are also in flames, Like when your entire life is in flames, you want to say I'll stop doing that and I'll just focus on these things. Superman is fighting so many fronts of so many different fires, and he's like, I will fix all of this at some point. I must keep pressing on. I must keep being the person that I am, and I must be this beacon of hope. And that's what sold the movie for me. And I love Fantastic Four, and I will get to that review next. And I think that Fantastic Four is it's a good movie. It's not bad. It's a good movie, right? But Superman made me feel something. Superman made me reflect on myself. And I feel like when a movie has the ability to make you look at yourself and think more, it's more than just the movie. It's more than just the end point of the movie. It's a movie that is reflective as the whole of the movie. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff in this movie, and I didn't want to spoil any of that because it's more fun to watch all of that. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what this movie feels like and why it's good. I think that you should watch it, so I'm not going to go blow by blow to any of these different things. The more I like a movie, the less I want to spoil about it. because I just want you to like enjoy this movie. But that's what this movie is. And I think that's what James Gunn was trying to do. He wanted to make a movie that is literally the S on Superman's chest. And it's a movie that could have very easily have been called Hope.